Okay, so earlier when we were at lunch, we were all discussing with Marco about different. Leon was asking how who's going to fund your project
who's
here,
going to fund
Right.
your project?
and that's why we had Marco on. Is
Yes.
how are you going to keep the development going for Bitcoin Private after you
Because
started?
you already saw what happened with the Z classes, where the development kind of died off because no one was paying for it. You didn't
Yeah,
get any.
you got a family and kids.
Yeah.
You couldn't work for free.
Yeah.
So
Right.
So how do you propose, without this founder's reward that Zcash has? How do you have any ideas?
I think right. I mean, I talked about it a little bit. I think that we have learned that. I mean, I don't really have a solution at this point, right? So the bottom line is, like, I know that's definitely a big concern, and it's something that I know that, like we're saying that incentive structures are everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're all doing here in crypto. We're designing these peer-to-peer networks with built-in incentive structures that is motivating us all to work together in some way. And there is no real long-term incentive structure designed and in place ready to go for Bitcoin Private right now.
okay.
And so I think that like longer term, I mean, so there's two choices. We could either try to design something that will go in before the fork,
Mm-hmm.
and then as we all decide to join this fork as a community, then you're sort of you're starting with a set of kind of what that's sort of how all these communities start is they all kind of have some core set of beliefs that they have to sort of start out and agree with. The alternative is if we wanted to make sure, like with Zen, what they wanted to make sure that development kept going long term. So when Z Classic and Zen split, they added some kind of development fund to the coin.
A treasury.
That's some sort of treasury,
Yeah.
right?
You want to comment on that,
Yeah,
Marco?
so-
why it's important that the project has some type of funding?
Yeah, so
like
we
you guys
actually,
did with
at Decred, we call it Decred tax because it sounds a little funny, but it also I agree. So you need to be able to perpetuate a project, right? So if you don't have any funding in place, you got to pay bills, you got to send your kids to college. So you have costs, right? So as a project, you need to have a continuous funding mechanism, especially if you want to attract more developers, right, and keep the project going longer term. So that's very important. So another thing that I heard you guys talk about a little bit is tension in the system, right? So you need to have the proper amount of tension in the system so that everybody is properly incentivized, right? So you don't over-incentivize one area. So for example, what you see in Bitcoin, the vast majority of power lays with the miners, right? So you need to have some sort of, tension within the system so that the miner gets a bit, the holders get a little bit, the developers get a little bit, right? And it all needs to make sense, right? So in Decred, we have the majority of the block funds do go to the proof of work miners because they have actual costs, for hardware but they have to share the power, if you will. And I'm talking about the power within the system itself. Mm-hmm. So you have to come up with something to perpetuate your project.
I was just learning about the Decred governance model, and it sounds really amazing. You're doing on-chain voting. I think, are you the only blockchain that does on-chain voting?
So as far as I know, currently we are the only ones that do on-chain voting.
Okay.
So and that is a binding vote, right? So once the votes get tallied, the code has been dormant, it gets activated or not, right? So if the vote is a yay, then the code gets activated and hard fork happens at that point.
That's really cool. And we know, so the Dash model, that's off-chain, but that has also been working, to at least like pretty well for a long time. And so I guess, anyway, what was the question again?
No. We were talking about the funding.
The funding.
For Bitcoin Private.
Right. So, what we know is that there's, I'm very concerned with, long-term, Bitcoin Private has a lot of technical advantages, right? If it's if it's a faster private version of Bitcoin, there's a lot of reasons why people would want to use it, but there needs to be some incentive to keep driving it and keep driving the development. And so we don't really have a solution in place for that right now.
So at lunch we talked off camera about, you said that, hey, there's going to be potentially some of Z Classic whales that could possibly sponsor you, support you. But in the short term, we can see that happening. I mean, we would be happy to support.
Well, are you concerned about what happened to Z Classic, where Zencoin, I believe, has a treasury, correct? Is that, or has some? Are you concerned then that someone in a group within the Bitcoin private community does what Zencoin did and then branches off and calls it something else?
Right. I mean, definitely.
And that would fracture your community, which I don't think we want.
Because you're the one who started the Bitcoin private community. Are you okay if they fracture off in the future, or do you not want that to happen?
So we have a choice that we're going to have to make, and if Bitcoin private launches with no kind of long-term incentive structure, what's likely going to have to happen is down the road, it may not even be me. It may be somebody else will say, hey, we want an incentive structure to keep innovation and keep things going, and it will fracture off the community just like it did with Z Classic and Zen, right? Mm-hmm. And I would prefer, obviously, not to have that happen, because I think that we'll be a lot stronger if we stay as a cohesive community.
Yeah.
Right. But this is where we have to get some proposals. We all have to learn some things. I think that we all I don't know what the answer is. And so I put out a little bit of a test feeler for, okay, what would the market sort of say about, what would people say about a treasury fund? And I asked Twitter, and I wrote a Medium article, and there was more people in favor of a treasury fund than against it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so we know that. And there were some very loud voices that were against it. Yeah. Right? Now, I suspect that if we have had a treasury fund, we could look at what the market price and how the activity around Bitcoin private, I suspect it would still, people would still want that. Right.
I'll bet you if you figure out a way, I don't know how you would do it technically, but if you had a voting system where you say, hey, send me half a Z Classic here if you want me to build a treasury. Or if you don't want it, send me a quarter of a Z Classic here, just a different number, right? Yeah. And let the vote there, and you can see for yourself
instead of the sock puppets on Twitter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I know where I would vote. I would vote for a treasury.
Yeah, and I would too, because your choices are neither, as far as I know, you either have a treasury or you have a pre-mine, like Bitcoin Gold did, and it just seems that a treasury model may be less of the lesser evil of the two than, say, what a Bitcoin Gold that you can either just.
It seems more fair.
It seems more fair, right?
So it is inherently fair because you know the value up front.
Yes.
Right. So if you set your not your pre-mine, but if you set your tax at 10%, then that should be the value forever, right? So then you can, as a user, sign up or not sign up for it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So if 10% is too much for you, okay, you can walk away, right? So it is inherently fair.
Yeah.
It is absolutely inherently fair. And from a technical perspective, skipping off 10% of a block is way easy, right, compared to any other thing you're going to do there.
Yeah, because like when we participate and contribute to your Bitcoin private project, right? We don't want to see you fail.
All right.
Like if you're the founder and you have your team and you recruit a team of engineers and you're building it and you're making it work, I don't want it so that 5 years from now, I don't think any user wants it so that 5 years from now it goes to zero. We wanted to keep developing on it. So if you say, hey, I need to take 10% off the top, you had tweeted to me and you said you suggested like 5% or something like that, and I said no. I said that's not enough. A minimum of at least 10%. I even suggested 20%, right? So that you have enough to keep the project going. Because as long as the project keeps going, the community will stay there,
and the value will keep increasing because you're going to put
because we know that you're there to help work on it.
I think this is all a big experiment, and we've been learning. We can now see the difference between projects that have these treasuries and the ones that don't. And I know that I'm observing things like Dash is taking over Monero because Dash can spend $4 million a month on marketing. Yeah. And Monero can't. Yeah. And so I think that on this issue, I'm definitely going to need to do some more research. I'm going to need to talk to experts about this, and I think this is really big.
The big issue with the treasury is how the governance around that fund,
Sure.
right?
That's the
How do you
complication.
spend that money? Okay, is it like Zcash, which is just going to a corporation and they decide what to do with it, or is it
Right.
something like Decred or Dash where they have a proposal system where the community gets to vote on it? I mean, that's I'm not telling you what to do, but that's the difficulty about having a treasury.
One thing I don't like the Zcash model, because they just get the money goes to a corporation, and then it's completely private whatever they do with it. They have there's some transparency, and X% goes to investors and whatever, but basically it's private.
It's not like one of the that's one of the things that we like about the Decred project is when they do their governance and their treasury. From my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marco, but you guys have it set up so that the funds go into a treasury bucket.
That's correct.
Or a war chest, or a marketing, a fund,
It's-
and then the community votes on that.
Right. Well, so
Not the devs like you or anybody.
No, it's the stakeholders. So if you own Decred, you are allowed to vote on the proposals. So that system is about ready, actually. So it will be deployed here pretty soon. But that'll give people with tickets, so people who are allowed to vote on Decred, actually the capability to vote on proposals.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're going to have a dispersal system that's going to go with that. So, for example, I'm going to develop this feature. It's going to cost me 100 Decred a month for 6 months, right? And then you would set a payment schedule to disperse that money automatically as time goes by. So,
And that's all done on chain, so
That will
there's
be all
not
done
a
on
human
chain.
involved.
well, so there's two things to note here, though. So there's going to be on-chain and off-chain voting. You're going to need that. So a $1,000 marketing budget does not need to go on-chain. The only thing that goes on-chain for that is actually the payment, right? 'Cause
Okay.
that is too much additional information that we would have to carry on a blockchain that essentially has no value. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to have a two-tiered system, right? So we currently have working the on-chain hard forking mechanism. So that is directly voting on-chain and then activating some new feature. The second portion is signaling. We would like to, right? It's a wish list. So you create your wish list with your 10 things, and then the stakeholders can vote on those proposals. So those proposals can literally be 1,000 Decred for this marketing thing. We're going to go to the Miami Bitcoin conference, right?
Yeah.
So we need to disperse funds for that. Does it make sense? So
Yeah.
separating hard forking from signaling is what that means.
Okay.
If you're interested in learning how to be a blockchain developer, one of the best things that you can do is just start reading the code. And one of the things that we need in the community is people to review things like these new wallets that are coming out, because there are a lot of new members of the community that came in to participate, and it takes a lot of work to vet everyone and all of the lines of code, and people have a lot of incentive to try to steal other people's crypto. And so anyway, that's just the thing that you can do to help out is to help review pull requests and review code.
That to me, when you say something like that, and you guys are getting flooded with all these pull requests right now to update the software and check the wallet software and stuff. That's just, to me, more reasons and more grounds to have some type of treasury.
So you can hire people.
So
to
you
do
can
that.
hire people to do that, because, like I remember, they're paying him a crap load of money at Dell Computers before he retired. Thanks to the Bitcoin investing and the crypto investing that we've done on our channel, right? But before then, I would always tell him, "Hey man, why don't you go and volunteer and help out one of these Bitcoin projects or Ethereum?" He goes, "Why would I do that?
Yeah. Well, 'cause
They're not going to pay me with what
right.
Michael Dell's paying me."
Yeah, and you have to work.
Well, and
Yeah,
actually, don't forget that a PR is actually more work typically to review than it is to write. And that is a misconception. So people always just submit all these PRs. Well, guess what? If it's going to go on the blockchain, I'm going to spend hours noodling over that thing, making sure that that we actually that it's going to work always.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's actually been one of the things that has kept Z Classic from getting hacked and having any problems for all these years is I've been actually really careful not to accept anything into Z Classic other than pull requests that have already gone through Zcash and have been looked at and everything.